Hey guys, in today's video I'm going to take you through how you can make some really precise templates, and as an example I'm just going to show you what I would do if I had to make a piece of metal that had to go onto these 4 holes. Now there's lots of different ways to do this. Some people will put something over top and try to trace it. I do this a little bit differently, and all it really requires is a caliper, pen and a piece of paper, and a little bit of time on your computer, which I'll show you after. Now if you look at these bolt holes, you'll see this top bolt pattern is spaced out further than the bottom. There's an angle in here. So I think a lot of people probably know the standard method to measure the centers of something like this. And how you would do the centers is you would take the diameter, you would zero your caliper, and then you would measure from the outside to the outside. So that 2.24 inches there, that is the exact center of this. Now one thing for clarity here at the start, you might have noticed that I measured this bolt diameter, I zeroed it out, and then I measured outside to outside of the bolts to get the center distance. So essentially how that works, when you have 2 points, now essentially what's happening here is I have these 2 points and I want to know the center distance, okay? The center distance is the same thing as the outside distance, essentially from here to here, minus 2 radiuses, a radius on each side. So that's why I take the diameter, I zero the caliper out, so now the caliper is 1 diameter shorter than the actual distance. Then I can just measure outside to outside, and that gives me the centers. Now this obviously only works if your 2 bolt studs are the same diameter, and if they're not the same diameter, then you need to take that into consideration, which is just a little bit more math. If one bolt is, say, 1/2 inch diameter larger than the other bolt, which would be kind of ridiculous, you would then take 1/4 inch off of the one radius and so on. Where this gets a little bit more complicated is we have an angle in here now. So if we want to drill 4 bolt holes, it's not necessarily clear on exactly how you would measure this. So I'm going to show you guys a neat trick that I learned, and I'm just going to take you through how I do this. Okay, so I'll typically start by just drawing out the 4 points on a piece of paper in whichever fashion they lay. I'll then take my caliper on the 1 bolt here, zero it out, measure my top center to center distance, and it's sitting at like 2.258 inches, so I'll mark that down. Now you can see I still have my caliper zeroed out, so I'll go and measure these next distances now. So those ones are showing me 3.079. I'll do that for the remaining bolt holes. So these ones are at 1.761. And my last 2 here, getting like 3.2 inches for the sake of argument here. So that's what I've got on my piece of paper right now. I essentially have 4 distances between these points, but that's actually still not enough information. So the last thing I'll do is I'll come in here and I'll grab one of these, I'll grab this guy here, 3.64 inches. And that's what we get. So you can see that took me about 30 seconds to put together, and you may be asking, what do we do with that now? And I'm going to show you where the magic comes in. All right, so here's where the real magic comes into play. I use Autodesk Inventor for CAD software. There's a whole bunch of free CAD softwares out there, and there's a lot of different ways you can do this. But essentially, I'll start by drawing the general shape of the part I want with essentially no constraints on it. Again, I'm not going to tell you too much detail what that means, but I'm just going to enter the dimensions that I measured, and this is going to tell me exactly what size this thing actually is. So my first measurement here, let's take a look at my piece of paper, was 2.258 inches. This dimension here was 3.2 inches. This one at the bottom was 1.761 inches. and this dimension here was 3.079 inches. So you can see that these are the only dimensions I took. There's still lots of ways that this thing can move around. So it's not fully defined yet. So I'll enter this last measurement I had here, which was 3.64 inches. And for the sake of this CAD software, I just need to constrain essentially this one point here. And we'll just say this line's horizontal. It doesn't matter what it is or isn't. But you can see now that there's actually two different angles in here. So this part wasn't as simple as it actually looked. If I would have drawn these 3 points as a right angle, it actually wouldn't have been correct. All right, so now I'm just going to really quickly make this look like something. I'll just say that I want to do these holes as like 3/8 of an inch. Just make them all the same size. Again, the CAD modeling thing is something that's probably going to take you a while to get used to, but you don't even have to go any further than the point I've gone if you just want, say, a bolt hole template. And we're just going to make this thing look really ugly and make these 1 inch. Fill in the sides here with some lines. We'll just make all these guys tangent. Oops. Trying to do this as fast as possible so I don't put you guys to sleep out there. Okay, now I will just make this an actual thing here very quickly. Say when we build this part, we want it 1/2 inch thick. All right, so there's one other little trick I'm going to do here. I'm just going to throw a rectangle on here. I'll make it, say, 1/4 inch by 1 inch, and it can just sit wherever. I'm just going to throw this through the part as a slice. All right, so now you may be wondering, what are you going to do with this? And here's the trick. So I've just allowed the computer to come up with all of the geometry on this part for me. I really measured, took me 30 seconds to measure this thing. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a drawing out of this part at 1:1 scale, okay, on a piece of 11 by 17 paper. Now, I can also do things like add in some little center marks. Now what I've got here is a 1:1 scale part printed out on a sheet of 11 by 17 paper. So I can use these little center marks essentially to mark my holes. I can cut this piece of paper out, trim it, fit it, lay it out on a piece of aluminum or whatever it may be. And I can also measure this distance here, make sure that it's that 1 inch, and that will just confirm that your scale is perfect. So I've just allowed the computer to figure out all the geometry for this. And all I really had to do was 30 seconds worth of measuring. Now, I get that not everybody knows how to use CAD software, but it is actually pretty straightforward to do things like this. And this technique can essentially be applied to anything with holes in it. It's my favorite way to make really precise stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, and I will catch you again on the next